The fork in my life's road. During my senior year of college, all my classmates were beginning to look for jobs after college graduation. It was at this time that I reached a fork in the road. One road was well-paved, had street signs and traffic lights, showed up on everyone's GPS system, and was full of traffic. This was the road all my classmates were on. The second road was empty and wasn't much of a road at all. It was more of a mysterious path into the forest. I got my first glimpse at this curious trail into the unknown during the first semester of my senior year, when I took a class called Intellectual Assets. As critical as I may have sounded of my university education earlier, I'm genuinely grateful that I took that course, as it changed my life forever. Oddly enough, this class was the least engineering-y class on my schedule. The lectures were more like discussions. We never used equations, and there were no weekly problem sets. Instead, the focus was on creativity, inventing, patent law, and business. It was during this class I felt like I'd found my calling. That's it. I'm meant to be an inventor, I thought. I quickly learned that in modern times, being an inventor really means being an entrepreneur. Suddenly, I found myself captivated by the world of entrepreneurship and startup companies. At the time, this was the fall of 2007, there was very little information available on how to launch a startup. Most business-related educational resources were about how to run and manage a business, not how to start one. About a month into that class, without having a plan of any kind, I proposed to my classmate and friend, Alec, that we should start a business together. We were both biomedical engineering students, had worked together before on many assignments and projects, had similar work ethics and senses of humor, and Alec had actually taken a handful of business classes as electives. We were a solid fit as partners, which is critical when diving into a new business together. I realize now that it was incredibly unusual that we started on this adventure together without having any preconceived notion of what our business would be. We just knew we were going to go for it and swung for the fences. To find our way through the fog, we tried to follow the examples of inventors I learned about in my intellectual assets class, like Thomas Edison or Alexander Graham Bell. We started by getting together every week for brainstorming sessions where we'd generate a list of possible inventions. It wasn't important that we actually knew how to create the invention. That was a problem to be solved later. At this stage, it was important not to judge the ideas at all, to keep an open mind as to what was possible and really stretch our imaginations. Alec liked to refer to this process as fantascience. One hypothetical invention that stands out in my mind was the idea of genetically engineering luxury plants. This could mean a lot of different things, anything from modifying flowers as colors, to engineering fast-growing bonsai trees, to developing grass that would stop growing after it reached a certain height. We didn't only brainstorm ideas when we were together, we also came up with ideas on our own and put them in invention notebooks that we'd share during our brainstorming sessions. Inspiration could come at any time from any place. For example, I remember one memorable night where I went online and started Googling different articles about luxury plants and genetic engineering. I came across a blog that focused on linking passages from old science fiction novels to current news articles about real products that actually did what was described in the science fiction novels many years earlier. One such article showed a passage in a book from the early 1900s that talked about plants which would grow into trees overnight. The article was linked to a recent news article about a company that was genetically engineering plants for rapid growth. As I clicked through this blog, I came across a fascinating post which would end up drastically altering the next 2 years of my life. The post included a passage from an old science fiction novel that described a weapon that would briefly paralyze people like a paralysis grenade. The post was linked to a news story about a United States military project called the Active Denial System, which worked as a ray gun that would make people feel like they were on fire, even though they were not harmed. Reference 14. It worked using electromagnetic waves in the microwave range to activate nerves which generate the sensation of pain without actually harming the person's body. The idea of using light as a way to activate or deactivate nerves sparked a lot of possible inventions in my head, such as using light as an anesthetic. This led me to staying up late into the night, researching how pain was transmitted through the body, how nerves worked, how they were controlled, how anesthetics worked, what the benefits and downsides of anesthetics were, what other mechanisms researchers tried using to modulate proteins, how light interacts with proteins, how some research was linking specific wavelengths of light to proteins. It went on and on. It was incredibly exciting and fun to be learning in this manner, and I was consuming information at a rate I'd never experienced before. This was the first time I'd gotten exposed to a different approach to learning, where instead of a teacher presenting a curriculum, conveying information, handing me an assignment, and grading me, it was based on following my own interests and curiosity. I wondered, why couldn't my whole education have been like this? You might think this call to action caused me to switch my focus towards education. Nope. I was far too busy having fun playing with technology and doing fantascience. After a month or two of holding weekly brainstorming sessions, Alec and I had a different kind of meeting where we began narrowing down our ideas to find the ones which were both technically possible and practical as a business. It was important that the idea not just be cool, but also be valuable to a potential customer. There are millions of cool ideas out there, but it's much harder to find something that will actually be useful enough to justify launching a business. We decided to focus on different applications for using light to modulate proteins and enzymes. Initially, we focused on using this technology for anesthesia. Since we were biomedical engineering students, creating a medical device got us pretty excited. But we later pivoted away from medical applications towards using the same technology to speed up commercial enzymes. It seemed a lot more reasonable since medical devices are heavily regulated and have incredible technical challenges. Our probability of success was so small as it was, we opted for a path of less resistance. In choosing which commercial enzyme to focus on, we learned that the emerging industry of cellulosic ethanol was in desperate need of more efficient enzymes to make their technology work. After we narrowed down to a specific business idea, we had a vague idea of the process that would follow to bring this idea to life. Raising money, hiring people, performing lab research, building a product, and selling it. This is the process I learned in my class on becoming an inventor and was reinforced in a course on entrepreneurship that Alec and I both signed up for. Despite receiving this high-level overview in these courses, it was still all a mystery how we'd pull it off since we were in the position of actually taking the ideas and putting them into practice. As many people describe entrepreneurship, it was like jumping out of a plane and inventing a parachute on the way down. Since there was no instruction manual or curriculum on how to launch a biotechnology startup company, we had to be resourceful. To gain knowledge, we went to online forums, watched YouTube instructional videos, and read books. I also attended any startup company or technology transfer seminars that our university advertised. I was usually the only undergraduate and often the only student in the room. I asked questions and networked with the adults. They seemed to always have the answers. Naively, I considered their opinion even more valuable if they were wearing a suit. I was thankful for any moments of their precious time they were willing to give me. When selecting our courses for our final semester of college, Alec and I specifically chose classes that aligned with our project. For example, I chose electromagnetics and biophotonics as my electives, two classes that were related to light and how it would interact with biology. Alec took classes related to protein sciences. It was not just the classes itself that were valuable, but more so the access to the professors. Being in the class allowed us to raise our hands and ask questions related to our project, and gave us an excuse to visit the professors after hours to ask further questions. In many cases, the class material can be found for free online, but being able to connect directly and build relationships with experts in the field is something much harder to access. By the end of our senior year of college, we had a research plan which had been evaluated by a couple of our professors. We were negotiating a deal to get laboratory space at the university to do our research. We were putting together a grant proposal to obtain funding and began contacting investors. Despite this full speed ahead mentality, we really had no idea how we would achieve it. This blend of naivety and overconfidence was a perfect storm to encourage us to keep pushing forward. By the end of summer, Alec and I had raised over $250,000 from 2 investors and were beginning the laboratory research to prove the commercial feasibility of our technology. In some ways, the apparent success we were having so quickly following this alternative path seemed almost too easy. At the same time, it felt incredibly natural. Why had I waited my whole life to pursue entrepreneurship? I could have done this years ago. If only I had not been sidetracked by my childhood misconception of a career and realized my inner desire to create, I could have broken free from the constrained education system I was a part of all my life and could have gone down this road much sooner